Good morning and welcome to a live free class on the L, W, and R sounds. I should also say good evening because many of you, it is the evening and I am presenting this quite early this morning. It is 6 a.m. here in Chicago in the US, but I'm hoping that this will be, that this is a better time for my clients in Asia because these three sounds are rather difficult for everyone to pronounce for my Asian clients. So good morning. My name is Jennifer Tarle and I am the owner of Tarle Speech and Language Services, and we specialize in pronunciation training. We do sounds and word stress and intonation. So if you need any help on those, look no further. We are here. You can check out our website for lots of articles and the YouTube channel for free videos. So let's go ahead. I'm going to share my screen with you again. Okay, and let's start the show here. There we go. Okay, let's try this again. There we go. Okay. So if you have any questions, you could always shoot me an email, or you can ask some questions in the YouTube comment section. You could also send me a question from my website. Handouts will be available. I will post those to my website for you. So what we're going to do today is go through the top English as a second language American consonant sound mistakes, and namely the L, W, and R sounds. And we are going to talk about how we read these letters, how we spell these sounds, and some how-to tips on pronouncing these correctly. And then, of course, we're going to do a lot of practice. What are the most common ESL consonant mistakes? TH, far and away, is number one. I do have a class on that is recorded, so you can check that out on my YouTube channel here. Also, Z is another mistake. That's a very big mistake, and Z is an important mistake to fix because people get very confused because of the spelling. The Z sound is often spelled with an S, and that makes it very confusing for my clients. So take a listen to that class. I also have a class on the Z sound. The NG sound is very often mistaken, and I hear this mostly at the end of words. We have some confusing sound pairs, W and V, that we will be discussing later today. So if you want another free class, I am presenting that today at 10 a.m. US Central Time. SH and CH are two other sounds that are confused often. And I do have another free class on this from last week. You can check those out. And today we are going to talk about R and L, which these two sounds are confused often. So people are going to be confused. Do you mean read or lead? Do you mean fur or full? And so we really want to address this so that people know what you are saying. Just to let you know, I did add the W in with this sound too, because especially with my Asian clients, I will hear that as a mistake as well. So I wanted to really contrast that for you so you know what you're listening for. So let's go ahead and get started. Look at all of these different language groups that mispronounce the L, W, and R sound. I will point out that for the R, many languages have an R, but it's a slightly different variation of the American R. So if you have an R and people understand you, by all means, you do not have to fix it. However, if you are misunderstood because of your R sound, I do encourage you to go ahead and address that because, again, I go for clarity, not perfection. If you want perfection, of course, you can achieve that. But overall, I'm going for clarity so that people understand what you are saying. So what are some common mistakes? I definitely hear for the L sound many things. I hear R, right instead of light. D, doom instead of loom. W, win instead of lin. Sometimes people say nothing. I will hear ba instead of ball. And sometimes I'll hear a la, so call-a instead of call. For W mistakes, I'll hear a V, vow instead of wow, an oo, ood instead of would, an L, lead instead of weed. And again, sometimes people will add a sound and they will say saw instead of saw. And we'll get into this in a little bit. In English, we never use the W sound at the end of the word. So that's why I say add here. People will say wa at the end of the word. For R mistakes, I'll hear D. People will say rough instead of, oh, this is a mistake. I will fix this for you. So people will say, let me give you a good mistake, dough instead of row. People will say lead instead of read, weed instead of read, or they will say nothing, ca for car. How do we read these letters? So when you see this letter on the page, how do you know what to say? L is typically read as the L sound. Look, delete, and file. W is typically read as a W sound. West and flower. The big exception for the W that we did talk about a little bit at the beginning is that W is not used at the end of a word. And so we say saw with the ah vowel at the end, or law with the ah vowel at the end. And then the R is typically read as the R sound. So you will hear someone say run or period. What about spelling? How do we spell this sound? How do we know when we say the L sound or the W sound or the R sound when we're speaking? How do we know how that's spelled? So the L sound can be spelled typically two ways, with an L, single L, let, valid, or file, or with two L's together that we only say one time, collar, well. The W sound, W it's spelled, one always, can also be spelled as a digraph. So a digraph is two consonant letters next to each other, only pronounced as one sound. When, why, and what. The one exception to keep in mind, who is pronounced with an H sound. And we also spell the W sound with an O for once and one. So for the R sound, we spell that with an R, rule, and zero. Two R's, again, only pronounced as one. Hurry, narrate, an RH, diarrhea, or a WR, again, another digraph, right and wrong. Okay, so let me go ahead and you can see me again. Hello. Okay, so what are some tips on pronouncing the L sound? Let's go ahead through these. I'm going to have you watch me so you know what I'm saying. I'm going to be looking at my other screen so that I can be reading my notes. And let me take a quick sip of coffee here. And I apologize. I think my allergies are acting up this morning, so I'm a little congested. I apologize about that. Okay, so tips for pronouncing the L sound. Okay. The lips are going to be open narrowly. The tongue is going to be behind the top front teeth. It's going to be touching the back of the top front teeth. The airflow is going to be continuously moving out of the mouth, and your voice will be on. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Okay, so that would be in the word like, calling, call. Like, calling, call. Okay, so let me pull these up so that you can actually see them and read them with me. So your lips again are narrow. The tongue tip touches the top of the front teeth, the back of the top front teeth, and the airflow continuously moves out and your voicing is on. Okay, so let's move on to the next one, which is the W sound. So we're actually going from top to bottom. I did this in a certain order for you. So for the W sound, your lips are puckered. Ooh, they're very puckered. They're very rounded, like you're blowing someone a kiss. Mwah. So they're very puckered. Your tongue is tense and in the middle of your mouth. So your L was behind your top front teeth. The W, your tongue is going to be in the middle. The airflow continuously moves out of your mouth and your voice is on. Ooh. So this would be in the word one, one. Okay, and snowing, snowing. So let me pull these up so that you can see these. So again, your lips are puckered, your tongue is tense and in the middle of your mouth. The airflow moves continuously out of your mouth and your voicing is on. Okay, now let's move on to the last sound, the R, before we get into some practice. So for the R, your lips are going to be rounded. So what's the difference between a pucker and a rounding? I'm going to show you. So for a pucker for the W, ooh, for the R, So you can see my lips are a little rounded, but they're not puckered. Ooh. So puckered is very tense and very close together. Ooh. And then for the R, they're puckered. Is rounded for the R, is puckered for the W. Okay, so I'm going to do that a couple more times. So L, for W, for R. For L, for W, for R. So that's the contrast there. Now, what do you do with your tongue? This gets to be very confusing. The way I'm teaching this morning is that the R is going to be made with the tip of your tongue touching the back of your bottom front teeth. Okay, so my people who speak English who are watching this, who are ESL teachers, just relax for 1 second because I know everyone gets all worked up about this. The reason I'm teaching this is because it's very difficult for you to understand when you're not teaching this all the time where your tongue really is in your mouth, and it's really hard to kind of explain that. If you tell people to stick their tongue behind their bottom front teeth, the back of the tongue will pull up. So this is the front of my tongue. This is the back of my tongue. If you touch the back of your bottom front teeth for the R, the back of your tongue will pull up. And that will make the R sound. There are many ways to make the R sound. The reason I'm teaching this is if you confuse L and R, or you say D instead of R, or if you say W instead of R, you want to make sure that you have a very specific place in your mouth that you put your tongue. That really helps you learn the sound. So your tongue tip can also be curled back for the R sound. So whatever R sound you make, as long as it is correct, as long as it is an R sound, make it however you deem appropriate. That's totally fine. There are variations for every sound. One other thing to keep in mind is that the R is always a stable sound. In English, the sound does not move. So we're not going to say run. We're not going to say run, run. The R is going to be stable, run. So again, it's not run or run, it's run. It's very stable. So to do that, you can touch the insides of your top teeth with the sides of your tongue to keep that tongue very stable. So again, the tongue does not trill, it does not move, it does not flap, it does not tap. In English, it just stays there. The air is going to continuously move out of your mouth and your voice is on. So let me go ahead and show you this. So here are the directions for that. Okay, let's get into some practice. All right, so we're going to have you listen, repeat, and do this on your own. Okay, so watch and listen. We're going to start with the L sound. The L sound at the beginning here. Large, latest, legalize. Large, latest, legalize. Dollar, electric, violation. Dollar, electric, violation. Sell, retail, dial. Sell, retail, dial. Scroll down to the last log entry. Scroll down to the last log entry. Okay, so now I'm going to have you try them. So let me pull these up so that you know what I'm saying here. Okay. Repeat after me. Large, latest, legalize. Large, latest, legalize. Dollar. Electric. Violation. Dollar, electric, violation. Sell. Retail. Dial. Sell, retail, dial. Let me give you one tip for the L at the end of a word. I'm actually going to have you watch my mouth again. Okay, so for the L at the end of the word, L is a little bit like a vowel, L is a little bit like a consonant. When we say in English, you want to make sure that you really have that L sound at the end of the word. If you don't, this is when I hear people say something that sounds like a vowel sound, or they add that la to the end of the word. So what we do in English is we tend to end the sound in a very specific place with the tip of your tongue touching the back of your top teeth. So it looks like this. Sell, retail, dial. Or my last name, Tarle. So the reason a lot of people really have a hard time with my last name is because they don't end with that L, Tarle. It's really not that difficult. That's a good word to practice with all of these R's and L's today. Okay, now let's try the sentence. Scroll down to the last log entry. Scroll down to the last log entry. Okay, let's go on to W. Worry, once, where. Worry, once, where. Always, someone, worthwhile. Always, someone, worthwhile. And we never use W at the end of the word, so you don't have to listen to that. And then in the sentence, once a week I work with Will. Once a week I work with Will. Okay, so let's pull these up and do a little practice. Okay, repeat after me. Worry, once, where. Worry, once, where. And just a tip, where, W-H-E-R-E, as in where is it, and wear, W-E-A-R, as in I wear clothes, are pronounced exactly the same. Let's move on to line 2 in the middle. Always, someone, worthwhile. Always, someone, worthwhile. And in a sentence, once a week, I work with Will. Once a week, I work with Will. Okay, how did you do? Always remember, reflect on your pronunciation, reflect on how it sounded, reflect on how your mouth felt, and that's really going to help you learn this new skill. Okay, now let's listen to the R sound. Writing, revenue, reasonable. Writing, revenue, reasonable. Parent, everyday, vocabulary. Parent, everyday, vocabulary. And technically we don't use an R sound at the end of the word. It's considered an R vowel, so we're not going to get into this today. One other thing to keep in mind is that there are so many R sounds in English. When R is with a vowel, it sounds different. When R is at the end of the word, it sounds a little different. When R is at the beginning of the word, it sounds a little different. So make sure you really practice your R's and you understand that there are going to be some slight variations But the key is to have a good, consistent pronunciation that is an R, that's not a D, that's not an L, that's not a W. Okay, let's try listen to the sentence. The revenue forecasts are promising. The revenue forecasts are promising. All right, now it's your turn. Repeat after me. Writing, revenue, reasonable. Writing, revenue, reasonable. Parent, everyday, vocabulary. Parents, everyday, vocabulary. The revenue forecasts are promising. The revenue forecasts are promising. Excellent. Okay, so one last thing we're going to try here. Let's go ahead and let's say the first word in the initial position list here. So let's start with large, worry. Remember, we're not saying this W, writing. Large, worry, writing. That's a really good exercise to practice words out of order, not just all the L, not just all the W, and not just with all of the R sounds, because you want to really practice things in different situations to kind of feel the difference so you understand the difference between the L, W, and R sound. Okay, so now we're going to get into some more advanced practice with questions and paragraphs. So let me go ahead and share my screen again. Okay. So I'm going to read the question, and then you're going to read the question, and then you answer the question, okay? Please keep in mind with the questions and the paragraphs, they might not make the most sense, but the idea was to get a lot of W, L, and R sounds in here for practice. Okay, let's try the first question. I will say it, and then you repeat it. Which color do you prefer? Red, white, or yellow? Your turn. I prefer the color white. And question number 2. I'll say it and then you repeat it. When do you practice? Once in a while, very little, or every day? I practice once in a while. And question number 3, what do you like about learning through reading, writing, and lecture? I like reading because I can refer back. I like writing because I can reflect. And lecture because I can listen. Okay, so remember, stop for a minute, reflect on, was your R, were your lips rounded? Was your tongue tip behind your bottom teeth or where it needs to be for your production? Was your W puckered? And was your L, were your lips relaxed and was the tip of your tongue behind the back of your top front teeth? Okay, so let's move on to the paragraph. Just listen. I'm actually going to show you my face here so you can just listen. Okay. I like to read nonfiction books. They highlight real life stories about a specific person. Whenever I read about someone's life, I usually become more aware of the world around me. I understand and respect different ways of living. Also, I often learn that we all have similarities, no matter where we were born. These books are fulfilling and wonderful. I appreciate a good author who can write in a way that tells the story in a thrilling and interesting way. I highly recommend reading nonfiction books. Okay, so now it's your turn. Let me bring this back up and go ahead. Okay, how did you do? I realize some of you might not have gotten through this whole paragraph in that time because it's taking you a little bit longer to really reflect on and think about what you're doing with your mouth and your tongue and your lips. Don't worry about that. That's not an issue. Your practice will be slow at first, but as you get into this and do this more, you'll become faster and faster, which kind of leads me into practice tips. So what you're going to do, again, I see a couple of mistakes here. I'll fix those before I post it. You're going to listen for the R sound, for the L sound, for the W sound. Keep a list of words that you use with the R, L, and W sounds, and then practice. Word lists, reading out loud, talking with a friend. Practice for short periods of time throughout the day. Look away from the printed word to engage your muscle memory. Correct a friend to work on your listening. And get coaching. This is important. Tell people you're practicing your pronunciation, especially if you're living in America. People will not tell you you're pronouncing anything incorrectly. They don't want to embarrass you, so you have to give them that permission to correct you and focus on the sound that you are practicing. Let's go back up to this page for a second. Keep in mind also that there is sort of a hierarchy of getting through your practice. And the hierarchy will be that it's going to be easiest to say these sounds in one position of a word. It might be the beginning, it might be the middle, it might be at the end of the word. So it's important to practice the sound in various positions of the word. It's also important to then remember, this is a hierarchy. You're going from words which are simple into sentences, into reading, and then into talking. So again, it's going to be very difficult to use this at first while you're having a conversation. This doesn't just happen overnight. So you're going to have to practice, really learn what your mouth is supposed to be doing, really learn what this is supposed to sound like so that you can correct yourself. If you need more assistance, I do have some good free assistance for you. Check out my spelling rules blog posts, where you can learn about different spelling, how to read words. I have free pronunciation videos, as you know, on my YouTube channel. They're also on my website. You can stay up to date with Twitter, Facebook, on my LinkedIn company page, on YouTube, and on iTunes. All of my Minute of Speech videos are uploaded to iTunes, so you can practice on the go and you can subscribe there. Also, if you really like this, I really do appreciate your telling a friend and sharing my information. I do love to help everyone, and that also helps me grow, so I really appreciate that. And lastly, if you do need more practice, I do offer practice pages on my website for L, W, and R. Very excited. I'm launching a new website, and I have new materials that offer you audio and video and practice word lists for you to practice. Also, if you're interested for my Japanese speakers, I do have my iBook, which is all of my materials in book form that you can use on your iPad. Everything is integrated. It really makes your practice quick and easy, and I'm hoping to come out with more of these books for different language groups in the near future. So thank you so much for being with me this morning or this evening, whatever time it is, wherever you are. I love to hear your feedback. Please let me know. And if you have any questions, again, please send those to me via email, post them to my website, or you can also post them in the comments section at the bottom of this video. So thank you so much and have a fantastic day and best of luck to you. Thank you so much.